All right, good morning. It's Sunday. I want to do something a little different today. I've had these pictures forever, but they've been on my desk for the past few months. And I got Colby here with me this morning, my youngest daughter, and Cole just woke up. That's kind of a shocker because normally he's up with the roosters. I mean, literally, the kid gets up at 5 a.m., even whenever it's not during school days. But nonetheless, I wanted to do a little explanation of why I have such a fondness for the Chevy Square Body, and really the Blazers too. My first vehicle was a '78 K-5 Blazer Cheyenne, and I want to kind of tell the story because it's got some interesting, relatable content to it. And for those of you who knew my father, which he's not with us no more, um, he was a man of many things, and he played a big part in the story of this truck, and I just wanted to share it. I've been very blessed to have someone like him in my life, and my stepfather as well. I can't thank him for everything he's done for me and my family. Um, you know, even working with my father, their relationship definitely developed into um, something very amicable over the years, which that's a blessing too if you don't know about it. And I've had a lot of good mentors, that um, have guided me and been like fathers to me as well. I've been super blessed in many regards to have a lot of good guideship, from my two dads, and hell, even the guys that I consider fathers now. But we'll get into all this. This is literally story time. And for those of you who know me, I get on my soapbox. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm not going to speed through this. This is a very elaborate story, and it's got some good content. So it's a little different than what we normally do, but it'll kind of explain, kind of some of my background as a kid coming up, and why I really enjoy, the die cast and especially the square bodies. And I have a real love for them, unlike a lot of people that just grab them because they're popular. Um, so I'm gonna kind of thumb through them as I tell what I can remember, from start to finish, if you will. And then later on, I'll change the camera view, and we'll go through them again. And I'll just kind of let y'all look at these pictures. I know it's a little different than what everybody else would do. They would put it on the screen and do a slideshow, but I'm not quite there yet. Still learning. But we'll go through this and kind of tell the tale of the K-5 Blazer that I had. Um, so let me set them down for a second because I need to tell the prelude, right? So I didn't actually get this truck until after I was 16. I think I was a junior in high school, or maybe end of a sophomore. I can't remember. I dated a bunch of these pictures. I'm trying to remember when we actually purchased the truck, but I know it was. I want to say it was summer of 2001, or fall of 2001. And I'll get to that in a minute when I start looking through some of these photos. So I had saved some money, and I literally, I was always doing something with him, his landscape company, and high pressure cleaning. And when I was probably eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, my hustle was a lot of things. It was cutting grass. It was dragging a pressure washer around the neighborhood behind the mower, pressure washing driveways, anything to get my hands on, just helping out here and there, little side jobs, odds and ends. And I'd put together probably 2,500 or 3,000 bucks. I can't remember what it was, but it was a goodly sum, as some of the New Yorkers say. So we had started, kind of looking for a truck, and intentionally we were looking for, 88 to 98 Chevrolet, GMC, whatever, or 73 to 87 Chevrolet. I didn't really care if it was long bed or short bed. I preferred and wanted a four wheel drive because what we did back then with access to hunting, and a lot of ATV and we were doing, and just the areas, a two wheel drive pickup is just like a cardinal sin for my father and I. We've owned them, but we've adapted, and I've had one two wheel drive truck in my life, and that'll probably be the last one unless it's fast or it's lowered or slammed or something. So we kind of started looking, and this is back when I would buy auto traders at the convenience store once a week, and I would just go through them, circle trucks I was looking at. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have, the internet was around and we were using it, but it was nothing like it is today. People who were searching for cars like that to buy were looking for things all over the country, even like they do now. And they were still finding some things, on the web, if you will. But the way we had to do it was you had to go around town and look, and you had to have people looking around town. Again, Auto Trader, newspaper, Green Sheet, Houston Chronicle. I can elaborate on that for another 5 minutes. So we both kept our eye out. And at the time, my dad was going through a divorce um, with my stepmother, his second wife. And to help tell some of this tale of this story, he actually moved his motorhome to a friend of his body shop. And he also shared that shop with a roofing company that I worked for actually during the summers while this truck was being built and put together, and even after. So he had a lot of interaction around these guys, and there's always cars coming and going. And they had a friend who was a car dealer, a private car dealer. And I remember the phone call I got one night. It was during the middle of the week. It was a school night. Phone rang. My stepdad, client telephone. Though some of you get that reference. So I answer it. I go in the living room and it's my dad, and he says, "Hey, um, Daryl and them, they got this Blazer over here." Da da da. Now I did skip a step here. So they had kind of talked about this truck about a month prior when I was over there, visiting my dad. And I heard the chatter about this truck, and it kind of piqued my interest. But it was a Blazer. I liked them, but I didn't really want one. I wanted a pickup truck bed for many reasons, right? So as he's on the phone with me, he's giving me his spiel. He's giving me the pitch, and I let him go on for probably 4 or 5 minutes. And he's like, "You there?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here." And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, Dad, I really wasn't after a Blazer." And in my defense, I felt I had a little say in the matter because I was going to be splitting this truck with him 50-50. Okay. I had some skin in the game, if you will. And I'll never forget, a lot of people have hung up on me over the 40 years I've been on this earth. But when that guy hung up that phone on me that night, it was, I'll never forget it. It was like, it felt like he slammed the phone down. Now, granted, he was calling on a cell. But I remember sitting in the chair and I looked at my stepdad and he was just kind of giving me daggers like, "What?" And I said, "Oh, he's good and hot." And I said, he's not pleased with me right now." I said, I'm not calling him back. I'm not talking to him until he calls me back, which it would have been tomorrow or the next day. So I think this is a Wednesday, right? And he comes to get me from school. I was like I said, I think a sophomore at the time. And this shop was in Clear Lake, and it was basically at the end of this road. And it passed a bunch of other businesses, a church, and some other stuff. And we made a left-hand turn. You're basically looking at the building, on the sidewalls of a big old pre-engineered metal building. And you make the horseshoe turn around to the carport where this is. This is more or less looking east, I guess. And I pulled up, and under the carport, where this thing's sitting, I see this Blazer. And I said, "Oh, that's that Blazer they were talking about." And I start, "Oh, it's cool. This and that. Hey, don't move that. You're moving the camera, Betty." Um, and this wave just kind of floods over me. And mind you, this guy's like a statue. My father looked like a cigar smoking Indian statue, like outside a tobacco store. And he's just doing whatever he can to be quiet and just kind of see where this thing plays out. And we're pulling around, and you can see his truck, which I still have. It's in the background, hooked up to his landscape trailer, aka the Beast. So we're in that thing. He's pulling around, getting ready to park it in front of his spot, and his motorhome is parked, over here. And I said, "Oh, what are they doing to that Blazer?" I said, "Who bought that?" And the look he gave me when he panned over to the passenger seat and said, "I did." And I literally did not think anything of it. And I said, "Oh, you want to have a toy?" Or he's like, "No, I bought that for you." I said, okay. Feelings, so many feelings, right? So I'm sitting there going, a lot of things are going through my head. And mind you, I had to be very careful about how I respond to this guy because he wasn't scared to use his hands, right? And just a matter of respect and how we were brought up and what have you. So I said, so you bought it for me, like, and I'm going to skip kind of the verbatim that we went through for a minute for camera filtering purposes. I said, so you want cash in hand or cashier's check? Again, that probably wasn't the smartest thing to respond to your father, but I thought it was cute. He kind of got a laugh out of it. And he said, well, let me walk you through it and we'll go through all that. And I'll explain to you my thoughts on this little endeavor. So, all right. So obviously at the time, um, some history about the truck was Daryl, our dealer friend. He had he had got a lead on this truck from a family. I guess it was in an estate, and I have all the paperwork on the truck still. I'm just trying to remember, from 25 years ago, literally. And they bought the truck new in '78, and I want to say the grandfather or maybe the uncle or dad had it or something. They drove it from like '78 to '85 or '6, somewhere in there, maybe in the late '80s, and it got passed on to the son of the great uncle or the grandfather, I can't remember, and it got drove into the early, maybe mid '90s, and it basically sat in the garage. And it wasn't like filthy when we got it, and it was, and it wasn't in garage stored very long, but the truck had basically, it needed a few things, right? So when they were trying to sell the estate from either that second hand owner um, passing away or becoming ill or what have you, Daryl got the lead on this truck, and um, he had heard about they were getting it out and kind of getting some things ready to get it to sell, and we kind of lucked out in the fact that they just put a whole brand new HVAC system in it. I mean, it had new condenser, new dryer, new evap. I mean, that was all good, right? And there was a few other things that they had got done to it. Just, the old shade tree mechanic stuff, basically get it to run and drive. And it wasn't running perfect, but because it had been sitting so long, had some bad gas and whatnot in it. And but they were able to, they meaning the owners of the the state of this vehicle that held it, they were able to get it running and driving for it to be sold. And it was a Cheyenne. It had high back buckets, power windows, power locks, cruise, full drive, obviously. Um, it had the crank rear window. It wasn't electric, but it was a very nice truck. It was a very clean truck. It had 74,000 original miles. Um, and the truck was there. Like all the trim was on it, and he paid $3,200 in 2001. And um, I mean, this thing was, the carpet was great. The dash was fine. I mean, people I went to school with always comment on the truck, especially after it was done. Just, man, you did not see a square body Chevy like that in that condition, especially after it was painted, unless it was basically restored. The truck was that nice. It had some wear underneath, because the truck was used and what have you. And I think the titling on this vehicle prior to him getting it was somewhere in Central Texas, in between like Katy and San Antonio, Schulenburg or Weimar, somewhere out there. So I'm talking to my dad, and we're walking through the shop, floor and out there on the carport where this thing's at. And I said, "So what's the plan?" He said, "Well, Derek, he runs the body shop." He said, "I went and bought all the materials for all the paint on this thing. And, you can see we already kind of got started. They took all the molding off and all the lights. And I want to paint it." And I said, "Well, what color are you thinking?" He said, "Well, again, that's going to be kind of your decision." He said, "What do you think about going all metallic brown?" I said, at the time, I wasn't, I mean, I liked the two-tone stuff because it was popular and it was around, even on the body styles after this. But it really made sense to me to do something different, kind of make it ours, mine, if you will. And I said, "Yeah, I'm cool with that." I said, "I don't want it white for sure because the jams, are brown." He said, "Well, we'll mask all those off and we'll paint them, and it's already brown underneath the engine bay, so we won't have to do a color change." He said, "Honestly, a lot of that'll clean up and we can just kind of roll with it." So that's the route we went. And they had started doing some of the work on the driver's quarter, just a little bit of it. Or I'm sorry, it was a passenger quarter. No, it was the driver's side. No, yeah, it wasn't passenger side. So they had started doing some of the stud welding on it and pulling some of the dent out. It had a huge like tree cave in from whenever they were using it hunting or wheeling or whatever. And the right rear quarter by the tail light was smashed in like 6 inches, and it was pretty nasty. But that was the only damage on the truck. It had the obvious whiskey dents and little door dings here and there in the racetrack molding, and the only rust the truck had was up there on the A pillar on the driver's side. It had a little bubble, which we took care of that. Um, so we're walking through all this, and the plan is, hey, I'm gonna pay Derek to paint this thing, and we're gonna go through it. Once we get done with paint and body, we'll do the rest, and you'll basically have it for your senior year because it's gonna take a little while. Okay, so this goes on, for a little bit, and I go over there. It felt like almost every weekend because that's just what I was doing then, getting rides over there. My dad was still coming to get me, and this thing is getting worked on by him for I don't know, probably 2 or 3 months, and financial troubles come in. The cost of my dad's divorce was definitely getting up there. So he basically had a conversation with me saying, "Hey, you're working." At the time, I was washing dishes at Diana's Hungry House, and he said, "You're going to start saving your coin and work out some kind of horse trade, or help me pay for this because I just can't afford it." So here I am, kind of left holding the bag, right? Truck's all tore apart. It'll still run, drive, and move, but hood's over here. All my stuff's in piles all over the shop, on pallets. And I said, okay. So I thought about it for a little bit, and I'll talk to Derek, and I said, how do you want to handle this? And he said, well, he was a crafty, clever fella, right? And what we basically came up with was, he said, look, I will help you as best I can on that truck to finish the body work, and I'll even paint it. But you're going to need to horse trade some work out with me here. And obviously, of course, that sounded good to me because there was no way I was going to be able to pay for $3,000 or $4,000 paint job at the time or more. I can't remember what it ended up being or would have been, right? So, mind you, this guy did a lot of insurance jobs. He did some other custom work. He did just general. He was a great body man. I mean, probably one of the best. And a couple other guys that would work in and out, to help him out. They were all stars. Kobe, he was a body guy. He would come and go. And Kenny Hill, he was a guy who did a little work on this truck, but he was also kind of a motorcycle artist, very talented individual. So all of them working on it, and then the guys that I actually worked with who had the roofing company, they also did some auto repair and some other, mixed dabbling of automotive. They would kind of help out and pitch in, and we just kind of made it work at first. And then obviously they got too busy, and I had to basically just do this work with Derek. So I helped him work on Corvettes, and I mean, you name it, anything that come in that shop, I had to do it. I had to help, and I was totally fine with it. Whenever I had breaks during the school year, fall break at the time, which was when this first started, Christmas, spring break, the summer following was the bulk of the work on this truck, getting it more close to being done. So I traded a bunch of work out with him, and we just kind of slowly worked on the Blazer, Friday nights, on the weekends when he'd come in, and I just kind of made it work. And according to the photos, we had painted it primer, first coat, on Martin Luther King Day of 2002. So I'll kind of go through a few of these to show y'all some of the damage, and body work that had done on it. It's got Evercoat all over it, to fix all the dings and what have you. And we had used just some mixed rattle can primer, just because the weather was so nasty that year during the winter, just to keep some of the bare metal. And then obviously whenever we'd get ready to prep it, we'd scuff all that off and throw OSFO on it and, prep it for the 4-to-1 primer. Real thick. It was really good to use on those trucks because they never had a straight panel on them. And a real thick primer, buildable primer, putting that on there, it took a lot of imperfections you may have missed, from doing the body work on it. It was guide coated in between first and second coat of primer, which was a must. And you'd be surprised what you find whenever you first coat primer a truck and you put a light coat of guide coat on it, which is basically just a frost coat. Then you come back and block the truck and find the highs and lows, so you can then again do more of your body work. But so the bulk of this was going on, Thanksgiving to Christmas. And then in January, we were getting ready to primer it. You can see we got the top masked off. I did not take the top off to paint it because the one or two times I did take the top off, I wasn't worried about what it would look like. I just elected just to leave the gasket on there until we got all this done. And if I ever didn't really like it, I would just live with it, right? Probably not the best decision, but it actually honestly looked pretty good when I pulled the top off the one or two times I did. And where the new paint line met the old line, it wasn't that big of a difference. These are all pretty much the same, but I'll give you all a few shots. So again, I learned a lot about body work. I'd seen them work on stuff like this, probably a year prior, and I'd been around Derek since I was probably 7 years old. He hadn't had his own shop maybe 4 or 5 years. But I'd go visit him up there with my dad. When he worked at Giles Volvo on Clear Lake, that tells you how long ago that was. So I'd kind of been around all this mess, with him and a few others. And this is Kobe's truck in front of mine, and my dad's walking away from him, following him. Hopefully I'm getting this thing right. I had the kids help me line up the pictures on where these things are looking. And again, we'll get a quick preview of all these whenever I change the camera view. So here's that spot on the rear quarter I was telling you all about. Kenny Hill and Kobe and Derek collectively probably had, I would say, 6 hours in just that panel. Using the stud gun and slide hammer to pull it all out and get the Bondo and sand it and do some more and, tweak it and this and that. So these are all, like I said, don't judge the book by its cover, if you will. This is just in stages of how we had to keep things. Because it was inside the shop, it was outside the shop. You just didn't want anything to rust. There's Pops right there. This is before we brought it in that day to prep it for primer. I'm glad we got this picture. This is, like I said, Martin Luther King Day, 2002. So mid-late January. Oh, cool Kenny hanging out the mouth. That's whenever he still smoked those things. That's Kobe right there, standing behind him. And then the guy over here, I can't remember his name. You can just barely see him in that picture. He was a friend of the guys in the shop. He was, I don't know what he did for a living, but he had some nice rides. He had a really nice, like 98 or 9 BMW M3. I used to really drool over that car. White, right. That car only had like 10,000 miles on it. So here's the first coat of primer on the back. Apparently, we didn't get many pictures of it inside the shop when it was first coated. That was outside. You can see how we'd already started kind of prepping it, after it dried to start seeing what we had to spray the guide coat on there. You can get a real good look at it right here on the front fender. So in between this photo and this one, I don't remember painting this thing as early as March, but maybe it was. So I was going over there. A good friend of mine, a couple of good friends of mine would take me over there. Apparently this was shortly after spring break of 2024 when we got to here. So basically 2 months. I know I was going over there a lot during the week. And mind you, we were making a drive from Alvin, where I lived, to Clear Lake, and it's still a 45-minute drive. I don't care how you go. You can maybe make it there in 30 minutes, but it's a 45-minute drive after work. And this was when I was still going to school a full day, 7:15 to 3 o'clock. So we weren't getting over there, honestly, until probably 4:30. We work on that thing, for 2, 3, maybe 4 hours and come back home. And I was having to, help pay for gas money because one of my friends who drove me over there, Andy, he had a 3/4 ton Chevrolet. It was a 95 or 6 model work truck, and that thing was thirsty. Okay. So, but he would help out, hey, I'll get gas today, because he enjoyed spending time with me and, work on the truck and whatever. Another friend of mine, he had a little Honda, a little EG Civic. He would take me over there, and he basically just farted around, but that was fine because the gas was cheap, right? And every weekend it was obviously just work on this thing, just bugging Derek to, hey, I want to get this truck done. I want to get, when can we get to where we get to a point to paint it? And obviously, I was a pretty patient kid, and I didn't mind trusting the process, and I leaned on his guidance, right? But surprisingly, in about 2 months, with his help, and like I said, the guys I work for in the roofing company, and everybody kind of pitching in, just to get the thing done and get it out of the way because it was a busy shop, right? About 2 months, we get to here, and that's me at 17, peeking over that door, doing all the prep, wiping it down. I got all the paper put on there, cover everything up. We had just, like I said, painted the upper valence and the inside of the fenders and left everything down from there. And some of these photos have some blotching on them, so sorry if they don't pick up too great. But masked off all the wheels. I can't remember. I think I ended up putting plastic on the wheel wells too. Or no, we had painted inside the wheel wells. That's why I wrapped the tires the way we did. Again, some of these look the same. I'm just I took a bunch of pictures. I'm so glad I did this. Before I talk anymore, that's why when we're working on Tyler's truck, he has a here's 03 F-150, and we recently acquired that from my second cousin's daughter, which it went to him whenever he passed. He was a big part of my family's life, and we kept looking at this truck, and this is a vehicle that he had kept for a long time, which was very unlike him. And Tyler was eyeballing it a lot more than I ever thought he would, and he was starting to kind of show interest in this thing. And we talked and made an arrangement, on buying the truck, and we've been kind of going through it and kind of doing the same thing we're doing that my dad and I did with my Blazer. But I'm doing a lot of video. I'm taking a lot of pictures, and of course he's giving me the eye roll. I'm like, look, you will thank me that I am making it a point to do this because I really wished I would have had the technology that we have now back then when we did this, because I would have captured all this on video. I was using disposable cameras to do this. Okay. This wasn't like I had a camera and I was out there, like Hooligan or, Larry Chen, I was literally buying Kodak cameras at Walgreens for $8, and the suspense would just kill you. You take all these pictures and just hope for the best, and then you develop them at the photo lab. But I have to explain to him that, hey, you will be very, very grateful that I took the time to do this, because look at how this truck looked when we first got it, and look at where it looks now, and we're still not done with it. It's kind of the same thing with this. So if you're doing any kind of project, whether it's with your kids, your grandkids, or cousins, or whatever, just take the time to take some photos. I mean, and you don't have to be real elaborate about it. But the problem I'm having now is going through, like, my mom's been going through a bunch of the photos that she's had forever. And I've gathered photos from my family from all generations. And as big of shutterbugs as my dad was and my mom was, she takes plenty of pictures, still does. And he did too, but I don't really have a lot of pictures of a lot of his vehicles and a lot of his lifestyle, from basically the time they got married in 73 till I was born. Like, I mean, there's a lot of pictures, but all the cars and stuff that he had and all the things that he had done, like, I have a handful, but they weren't like we take pictures now. So Make it a point to drive people nuts. Stick a camera lens in front of their face because you'll appreciate it down the road. So here's Derek working on helping me get this thing ready. This is me getting everything wiped down with the greaser. That's a picture of him. I don't know if he wants to be on social media, but he's basically right here looking at the camera with a smile, believe it or not. And then we start doing first coat. And we did this thing old school. I mean, it was a paint shop, and what he did, because I helped him paint plenty of cars, all hours of the night, all days throughout the day, all seasons. Okay, it was not a climate controlled shop. He did not have a paint booth, but as you can see in this picture here, he had a little fashion rig out of some conduit and some shop lights that he hung on some light chain. And what we would do basically every time we paint a car, this is crafty, okay? We would do a full clean sweep of the shop, right? I mean, we'd sweep the whole area. And he had one small plastic curtain that divided really his shop from the roofing company and the other auto group. But we would sweep the shop, all the doors up on his side, and we would get everything clean and tidy as best we can. We cover everything in plastic. He had an 81 Trans Am that was over here tucked away in the corner. You can't see it in these pictures, but it basically lived under painter's plastic. And he had some other things in there that he would just drop painter's plastic all over, just keep all the overspray from getting on. And we would soak the shop. We would soak the whole shop floor with water. And any of the fresh cobwebs that were up there, we'd get those prior to doing that. And as you can see, the shop floor is soaking wet, just so we weren't kicking up a bunch of dust when we were putting on paint finishes. And believe it or not, it sounds crazy because I helped him paint a lot of cars in that place. You'd be surprised at how minimal the trash was in the paint. There would be, a little trash here and there. You just have to come back and do your wet sand and, cut and buff. But for painting in an environment like that, it actually really wasn't that bad, in my opinion. This is just after clear. We did 3 coats of base and 3 coats of clear. I can't for the life of me. It was all PPG products. The primer was Omni, which, if I recall, was a sub company of PPG. Again, I may be wrong on that, but that truck after it was cleared. This is my buddy Andy over here on the right. He's over there gawking. He had to be there for paint day. He wasn't going to miss that for the world. As you can see, it might be kind of hard to pick up, but this was a few days. I think the next day after we had cleared it, there's some runs below that tailgate handle, and I'd already started taking a fresh razor blade and scraping them down. Even though it was under the tailgate molding, I still wanted to get it taken care of. This was GM Metallic Brown. I couldn't tell you what paint coat it was or what era of GM Metallic Brown that was. I don't believe it was from when this truck, was built, because it was a little different tone, a little brighter, really heavy metallic, and the original color wasn't metallic, obviously. For all I know, it could have been GM Metallic from the late 70s, early 80s Camaros and Firebirds, or it could have been something as new as the mid 90s. I'm not real sure. See, there's a little mixture. You can kind of catch glimpses of other vehicles in the background. That was a 96 or 7 Z28 that we worked on. They needed a bumper cover in the rear and had a smashed decklet or something. and put the apron paper around to keep everything from getting on the undercarriage. Okay, and then we're going to stop before I show you all the truck done, because I never got any pictures of it until it ended up getting a black hood. Short story on that was truck got put together. I feel like it was Memorial Day weekend. So this truck it took me like a month or two of going there after school, work on the weekends, to basically, after he painted it, that was it. He said, "Hey, I'll show you and I'll guide you, but I got too many obligations," and I was grateful for it. I understood. I was still using his space. I was taking up a stall, in his shop. So, I had helped him enough to do cut and buff and get runs out and trash and, address, errors from painting and clear and whatnot. And, like I said, it took me probably 2 months to go through that thing. And, basically I did a panel at a time. I'd wet sand everything with 2000, 1500, and I'd basically get it all prepped. I'd buff it, and I'd put painter's tape on this panel so that whenever I buff the next panel, I wouldn't burn into the next one. And, like I said, it took me a long time. Like I said, probably 2 months, because we painted this thing on March 25th, 02. And I want to say Memorial Day weekend or the first part of summer after we got out of school was when I had a bunch of my friends, a bunch of my car guys that I hung out with, very grateful for all their help too. They're very instrumental in helping me put that thing back together in basically half a weekend. So the remainder of April and May, I worked on the paint and the clear and buffing and all that, and kind of getting everything, all the parts allocated for. Spent a lot of time taking all the racetrack molding out of the truck, probably right before I got everybody together, and just checking to make sure it wasn't dented or kinked, because it was all piled up in the rear. And touched up some of the paint on it. A lot of it shined up really good, believe it or not, but there was a few places I had to take some flat black and just kind of feather it in and give it a little sand. I worked on that for a couple nights. And that Memorial Day weekend of that year, like I said, early part of the summer, I asked everybody to come give me a hand. I won't name off their names because I'm not sure if they want to be exposed, if you will, but there was probably 7 or 8 of us that we were just chomping the bit to see that truck done. And mind you, it literally looked exactly as it did in those photos, with the exception of putting it back together. So we had to put the hood back on. We had to put all the gaskets back on. We had to put all the racetrack molding. God, that was a pain, right? Had to, cut little individual squares off the 3M double-sided roll tape, and test fit everything. And you had to be careful because, the prongs that were in those things, you had to basically test fit them to make sure it fit. Because once you put that double-sided tape on there, that was it. It was on there. And you were basically pressing it on and making sure all of them stuck really good. Put the bumpers back on. I mean, take all the plastic off and, get the truck done, right? So we worked on that all one Friday night, all Saturday, and I think we finished up some things on it Sunday morning or something. And not everybody was there. Mind you, I'm staying in a motorhome that's parked outside this shop that my dad owned, when I was over there on the weekends. And we finally get this thing put back together, and it's ready for its maiden voyage, right? I got insurance taken care of, and I was going down to get this thing inspected. That was another endeavor, but finally got through that, got fresh tags for it. So it's ready to go, And at the time, shortly after we took it like on the road on a trip, um, no, that was after that. So let's roll back a little bit. Get the truck all done. It's got good tags. It's insured. It's ready to go. We all went to lunch at the Mexican restaurant down the street, and somebody had the bright idea. Said, "Hey, let's go see so and so in San Antonio." Okay, so only 2 of us went, me and one of my other buddies, and I will do a conclude of saying that was a great trip going there, but going back, I had a flat cam. So we literally limped this thing from. I remember getting off, coming out of San Antonio and getting past the east part of the 1604 loop, and I just got fuel, and I was going to merge onto the on ramp, downshifting in the second from third, and all I heard was wow, bah, 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 bah. I mean, it was terrible. So the 30-second wrap up of that part of the story, and I can tell that later if y'all want to hear it. I basically had to crawl this thing home, from the west side or the east side of San Antonio all the way to Mont Belvieu, where my dad was staying, to take it to his car hauler to haul it back to the shop where this thing was painted. So after we got it home, there's a whole nother story behind that. I get the truck back on the road, and that summer, shortly after that, to drive for my senior year. And the reason this truck has a black hood is the girl I was dating at the time. We all get emotional at teenage years. She got me good and pissed, and I slid around the corner of the shop with my foot on the floor on the pedal, and the chain link gates were open to the shop. It was two big 12-foot gates that were opened up, and they had the poles that stuck in the ground on the rock. And I thought I kind of guided past it while I oversteered and understeered in my drift of a donut, if you will, trying to exit the gate. And I missed it by about 6 feet, and I drove the front of this truck into the very edge of one of those gates, and it hit it so hard, and thankfully the bumper saved the bulk of it in my grill, but it pushed the gate down into my hood, and it crowned the front of the hood. So I just bought a LMC black hood and threw it on there, and I just rolled like that. I never did fix the paint on that hood after that. I was just, it was kind of a reminder. Honestly, I think I left it for myself to be mindful of my temper. But this is the truck done. Again, we're taking these pictures with a disposable camera. I drove it from right before my senior year. This was summer of 2002, and I sold the truck in June of 2003. I only drove it about a year. Here she is. In this picture, I just got the windows tinted. I think it was just legal, 35% all the way around. That didn't last very long. I ended up going to something much different, and you can kind of see the tint on here. And it was better than having nothing. But down here, even with good working AC, it was hot in that back seat. So later on, I ended up doing blackout on the rear side windows, like non-transparent limo on the rear roll down. And I did 20 on the front, and I had a dark eyebrow across the windshield. So on the cam we put in it was a Crane RV, big RV cam. I can't remember the specs on it, but it was kind of lumpy, not crazy. Did that with the intake, and of course it comes with the rollers and all that, time and chain, and motor's complete stock. Beyond that, it still had manifolds on it. Ended up doing I think a monster Dynamax muffler on it. Redid the exhaust from basically the collector all the way back, and it had a big Dynamax on it. Can't remember if it was 2-chamber or 3-chamber. And then I had a tailpipe going out to the driver's side, and it kind of teardropped over there where you just barely see it. Truck ran good. It was a 4-bolt main. It wasn't no warhorse, but it was enough power to satisfy me and keep me out of trouble. I always liked this truck because it had the Western hauler style mirrors. I didn't like the other ones. What I liked about these things is once you get them adjusted, they don't move, unless someone bumps into them or whatnot. The truck came with these wheels on it. They were some kind of aftermarket alloy garbage. 32 1150s. They were kind of like a Sport King variant. I think they're Pathfinders or something. They're all right. They're all terrains, nothing special. But oh, hey, come here. Up. So I don't know if I can see her, but this is my actually we call her border collie. That's what she is, Lily. She's just had her 2nd birthday, and Rocket's over here. He won't get up this high. Man, you're covered in water. Get down. So that's where all the white dog hair comes from. But there's a lot more I can talk about this. I'm sure this thing went on for, 45 minutes or whatever. But I'll pan over, change the camera view, and I'm going to have to pause it myself because my camera crew ejected the scene to go play with the dogs or whatever. But I'll give a little more insight on some of the other history of the truck as we go through the pictures, so I can get a better view of them. Stand by. Man, it's like I said, this is Dad's truck is only probably 2 years old in this picture. It's out in my driveway now. Doesn't have the headache crack on it. Doesn't have the factory wheels, but still got it. The fence I was talking about I ran into was over here on this side, and I guess the gate was shut. We did that sometimes just to keep people from coming in there and poking around, but it was over here. And I had a lot of these pictures taken over here, parked in this gravel area. Motorhome is right back there. Oh, sorry about that. The door panels I had repainted. That was a way different process than it is now, and the paint quality of those rattle cans was not what they are now. But it was better than having all the damage and scuffs and marks on the way they were. Yeah, you can see that. Rear quarter was worked on. Look at that blotched Vertigo, man. Like that? There he is. Put the head on that thing. Got the old Jack in Box large cup in there. Jesus. Taped MLK Day 2002. James and Clint Sharon. Got to give credit to a lot of people who helped with this thing. It was a village effort for sure. Yeah, see, there's that gate I was telling you all about. Buford head. Looks like Tyler. Peckerhead. Let's see if I can get the glare out of the light. Just can't get away from that thing. There we go. That's a little better. Again, it's really cool to. I'd had these forever, obviously, and I was showing my mom, and she knew what was going on at the time, and but she had never actually seen these pictures until probably 6 months ago. I'll probably see Derek here in a minute. We kept in touch for a long time, but after he retired, probably 10 years after this, I just kind of lost touch with him. This is his first coat. See all the blotching in the pictures. I'm not sure if that just got from where they were stored for a little bit or what, but got the old paint thinner on the floor there. This is after clear. I want to say this is in between stages. This wasn't final. Buddy Andy. These two knotheads. So we thought it'd be cute. We were working on Dakota next door, and they had the. I left this picture out a minute ago, but I wanted to kind of tell the story. So these Dakotas had these like vinyl clad badges or what have you. We had them pulled off and they were sitting on the dash. This is what we're going to tailgate. We had stuck them on the Blazer. This is I couldn't tell you who took that picture. These were taken. I used to go wash my truck at Little Tuck's Car Wash, which is off of Mustang Drive in Alvin, which is, I guess, west of here, if you will, behind this photo. My truck was looking all good, and I had all my supplies in the back. So, I need to go take some pictures of my truck. And they had just cut this grass, and I figured I wouldn't bother nobody taking them right here, and the sunlight was really good that day, so I did it. And there you go. And she was nice. Looking good. Fun fact, I always forgot that the fill neck on the gas tank was on that side. It's been so long since I've drove one of these. Now they're on the driver's side, So there you have it. There's a lot more I could talk about, all the stories and fun we had in that truck and all the experiences, but I figured this would it would shed some light on why that I love the Blazer, even the Bronco too. Just you kind of have a growing love for this style of SUV whenever you own one. Obviously, that's why I kind of chase the Blazers, because they're not as sought after, believe it or not, as the square body trucks. And that's just fine for me because I like them just as much or more. But anyway, something a little different. Didn't want to do, no 2-hour video, because it could have been a 4-hour video, to be honest with you, or several different parts. But I had a little bit of time. Everybody was still sleeping and snoozing, suck a snot, and chilling out, on a Sunday morning. And I had Colby and Colt up to help me for a minute, but that didn't last very long once the hounds got released out of the bedroom. So I will knock out the Cool Classics and that Boulevard Falcon Sprint some point today, and maybe start on the Porsches. Y'all bear with me. I know we got some plans to take care of some shopping and some other errand running, if you will, and some chores around here. But hope you guys enjoyed this and it shed some light and explain why I like the Blazers and how important it was to me, to go through this endeavor. So we'll stop it at 53 minutes. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching Diversified Diecast.